Hello, good evening. It's 10 p.m. and welcome to News at 10. We're also live on 3FM 92.7 and you can follow our live stream on Facebook and on 3news.com. Let's start the bulletin with the day's major news highlights. President Akufo-Addo says government has acquired 3 landfill sites for the final disposal of waste to improve sanitation. At the National Sanitation Campaign launch, he charged Metropolitan, Municipal and District Chief Executives to deploy and train sanitation officers within 1 month to ensure sanitation bylaws are adhered to. And the Colleges of Education Teachers Association of Ghana, CTAG, has refused to call off its 2-week-old strike to demand payment of salary arrears which has been outstanding since October 2016. CTAG has rejected a roadmap from the Finance Ministry for a validation exercise of CTAG members to be completed by the end of November. National Secretary of CTAG, Prince Ohiming Hema, says the government has not demonstrated enough commitment to effect the payment. And the Teachers and Education Workers Union, TEWU, says it will not participate in the 2018 World Teachers' Day celebrations, claiming its members have been sidelined. The group contends since the celebrations began in 1995, none of its members has been awarded in the top 3 categories of the awards. The minority in Parliament has predicted Ghana could be heading again towards highly indebted poor country, considering its growth of debt to gross domestic product. At a round-table meeting in Parliament, the minority also says the 2018 budget will not be able to create jobs because of severe austerities. And elsewhere, Zimbabwe's Army Chief General Constantino Chiwenga has warned those responsible for purging the country's ruling ZANU-PF party to stop, or the military will step in. The rare intervention comes just a week after President Robert Mugabe sacked his deputy Emmerson Mnangagwa. Mr. Mnangagwa, once seen as a successor to Mugabe, has fled into exile. And researchers say global emissions of carbon dioxide in 2017 are projected to rise for the first time in 4 years, dashing hopes that a peak might soon be reached. The main cause of the expected growth has been greater use of coal in China as its economy expanded. Researchers are, however, uncertain if the rise in emission is a one-off or the start of a new period of carbon dioxide buildup. Those are our major news highlights. Remember, we're live on 3FM 92.7 and you can follow our live stream on Facebook and on 3news.com. To our very first story, President Akufo-Addo says government has acquired 3 landfill sites for the final disposal of waste to improve sanitation. He charged Metropolitan, Municipal and District Chief Executives to deploy and train sanitation officers within 1 month to ensure sanitation bylaws are adhered to. He was speaking at the National Sanitation Campaign launch at the Banquet Hall of the State House in Accra.
The National Sanitation Campaign will focus on 3 thematic areas that will seek to change the attitudes of Ghanaians. The 3 areas are stop open urination, stop open defecation and stop littering. As part of efforts to lead by example, the President has directed that a sanitation marshal and a deputy marshal be appointed by every government agency and department, including the seat of government, to oversee compliance. The Minister for Water Resources and Sanitation, Joseph Kofi Adda, identified major logistical challenges his ministry is facing, such as lack of lands for processing of waste and lack of adequate equipment to deal with waste that is generated.
It takes the full complement of other inputs to be able to convert that waste into wealth or the dollar into money. In order to make this happen, it requires the enabling policy framework, adequate land, specialized trucks and modern equipment, as well as the right mix of human resource capacity to transform the waste to wealth.
President Akufo-Addo said 3 new sites have been identified to help deal with the concerns over lack of lands.
The 64-acre site at Utinibi is being engineered into a modern integrated material recovery site comparable to any in the world. Similar undertakings are being explored in the other regions to ensure that there are adequate, modern, engineered, and environmentally acceptable sites for the processing of waste nationwide.
The president also pledged his government will make provision for all other logistical challenges that the ministry needs to deal with in order to keep Ghana clean.
It is not in our nature as Ghanaians to be dirty. Successive Ghanaian governments have tried to reverse this trend and inculcate a habit of greater discipline in the care of our surroundings. It has not succeeded. My government intends to make a fresh start. Ministers, chief executives, and chief directors of government departments and agencies will be held accountable for any lapses in the failure to comply with this directive.
Meanwhile, Vice Chairman of the Coalition of Non-Governmental Organizations in Water and Sanitation, Atta Ahin, says Ghana must begin to treat waste as a resource which can earn money for the country. Speaking earlier on News 360, he called for the introduction of technology into waste management and reduction on reliance on landfill sites to dump waste.
For us, if for nothing at all, we believe that it is going to give us a coordinated front. We believe that it will be comprehensive and not ad hoc or piecemeal. We are sure that the level of mobilization is going to be high. And we are also pleased with the presidential backing that it has received. And we are also happy that it is receiving enforcement by way of the sanitation brigade. We should understand that some people have already taken the lead. I mean, if you talk about Rwanda, Botswana, there are some African countries who have gone very far. I mean, some of them have already banned plastics and all that. And so to want to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa within less than 4 years, for me, it's going to be an uphill task.
Do you think it's time to move away from landfill sites and think of waste as a product to generate extra income? That is look at electricity generation, so on and so forth.
I perfectly agree. We have gone too far to be relying still on landfill sites. Even the very less advanced countries have moved away. In Africa, many developing countries, are moving away from this. You see, technology has advanced. And we should begin to see waste as a resource. The time has come for us to move away from, landfill sites to more technologically advanced options, which can not only create jobs, but also ensure that citizens derive economic value from waste.
And away from waste management, the Institute of Chartered Economists Ghana says the energy sector levy bond was necessary to save some banks from collapse. CEO of the institute, Gideon Emisa, was however quick to add the over 177 million cedis expenses on issuance of the bond is not economically prudent.
A ranger's fee amounted to 87.5 million cedis, while legal fees stood at 700,000 cedis. The Ghana Stock Exchange application fee was 1.6 million cedis, in addition with listing fee, which amounted to 800,000 cedis. Securities and Exchange Commission took 3.5 million cedis, and the Central Securities Depository fee was 7.34 million cedis. Administrative expenses amounted to in excess of 80.9 million cedis, while printing and miscellaneous stood at 400,000. The total expenses for the issuance of the Energy Sector Levy bond was in excess of 177 million cedis, which is 3.7% of the 4.7 billion cedis received from the bond.
1.7 million is going into transaction costs. Of course, that raises some alarm. If you take the 1.7 billion out of the 6 billion target, then of course we'll be looking at 1.7% of the total money we expected to get. But the 1.7 million out of the 4.7 billion would be somewhere around 3.7% of the money we inquired, and that is quite imprudent on our part.
He indicated the government should have sought approval from Parliament before going to the market to issue the bond. On the 2017 budget, the CEO of the Institute of Chartered Economists Ghana, Gideon Amisa, pointed out some of the challenges and successes.
We've seen inflation coming down. We've seen some confidence level in terms of consumer confidence and business confidence going up. But the challenge has been with revenue targets being achieved. And then, in fact, starting the year, we came out with some particular statement that the target that we set for ourselves was overly ambitious in terms of revenue mobilization.
He suggested the 2018 budget should be hinged on backward and forward linkages of the various sectors.
But it appears that our economy, straight from agriculture, we just jump to services, which account for a large proportion of our economy. And then the growth rate of services is also very incredible relative to the other two sectors. So it is better for us to gradually move from the agricultural sector, have the linkages from agriculture to industries.
The minority in Parliament has predicted Ghana could be heading again towards a highly indebted poor country, considering its growth of debt to gross domestic product. At a roundtable meeting in Parliament, the minority also says the 2018 budget will not be able to create jobs because of the severe austerities. They urged Ghanaians to expect hardship in 2018.
The minority reviewed the 11-month performance of the NPP government and gave their expectations for the 2018 budget to be presented on Wednesday. Minority spokesperson on finance, Atu Forson, said government has failed to deliver on its numerous promises. He said apart from the free SHS, which is fraught with challenges, the one village, one dam, one district, one factory, $1 million per constituency, and support to small businesses in rural areas have all not been started. Atu Forson said although the NPP government promised Ghanaians of removing the 2% component of the special import levy, it was still active.
The 2017 budget statement did not propose any reduction in corporate tax from 25% to 20%. However, the finance minister and the minister for trade and industry have at different times reassured Ghanaians that the government will propose a reduction in corporate income tax. We wish to remind the Minister for Finance that Ghanaians expect a reduction in the corporate income tax rate from 25% to 20%. It is our expectation that the government will follow through with the firm promise that they are going to see, and we hope that we are not going to see another 419 or matrical situation.
The group also entreated government to immediately abort its plans of taxing mobile money transactions because it constitutes a serious threat to financial inclusion and economic growth.
It is an indirect way of taxing transactions such as transfers of school fees and mobile monies, medical bills in particular. The NPP must provide some relief to low-income families from this truck money transfer tax, I will call it, as this is nothing more than a backdoor move to reintroduce the taxes they removed last year.
He urged government to use the 2018 budget to address its failures, adding the country has slipped from 13 to 12 places on the World Bank Ease of Doing Business report. On debt, the minority regretted Ghana might be heading towards HIPC, considering the ballooning nature of the debts. The group was convinced that the 2018 budget cannot create jobs as asserted by the president.
How can you create jobs when the commercial banks do not have the needed liquidity to lend to the private sector? The commercial banks in this country are in big distress. How can you create jobs under severe austerity and the fiscal consolidation? The budget deficit in Article 4, IMF Article 4, is projected to be 3.8. So ladies and gentlemen, next year, let us be assured that there is going to be unfortunate severe austerity equivalent to 1983. We believe that, unfortunately, government economic policy for 2018 will bring about severe hardship, and Ghanaians must be well informed.
And still on the budget expectations, some business owners in Kumasi are expecting that the 3% flat value-added tax rate system will be scrapped in the 2018 budget statement to be presented in Parliament on Wednesday. Mark Osei is Secretary of the Ashanti Business Owners Association.
The flat rate is very suffocating. We can't charge if you are not charging, but you have to pay because you are a VAT-registered entity. You have to pay. How are we paying? We are taking the money that we are taking from the bank. People's money, our working capital to be paying all this. So within some short time, my business is going to collapse. Everybody's business is going to collapse. The government should charge from the source. I don't know the percentage. As for us, the percentage is not our concern. All that we want is that we bought it at this price. We look at our cost, we add our profit, then we sell. So whatever revenue that the government is engaging us to take for him, looking at the nature of our business, we can't do that work. It's impossible.
This is still news at 10. We're live from the News Hub at Adesawe Kanda in Accra. We have more news for you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, the LPG Marketing Companies Association of Ghana is challenging claims by the National Petroleum Authority, NPA, that the proposed cylinder recirculation module can increase penetration better than the current module. Following the Atomic Junction explosion, Cabinet came up with policies to curb future occurrences. One of these policies is the introduction of the cylinder recirculation module of LPG gas distribution. However, the LPG Marketers Association says the measures are only reactionary and detrimental to existing businesses in the LPG value chain. In the studio tonight, I have the Vice Chairman of the LPG Marketers Association, Gabriel Kumi. We will be having a chat on some of the concerns that they have raised and the way forward. Mr. Kumi, good evening and thank you extremely for your time.
Good evening, Steve.
Your association believes that the NPA's claims that the cylinder recirculation will actually increase or boost gas consumption in the populace. You say that's erroneous?
Very erroneous, Steve. The full introduction of cylinder recirculation is going to cut consumption of LPG.
Rather cut consumption?
Yes, it's going to cut. In fact, the poor and the poorest will not be able to consume LPG.
How so? I mean, why does this?
Because now the average size of cylinder is costing about 75 Ghana cedis as we speak now. If you have observed the buying patterns of consumers, about our survey suggests that about 20% of the people who walk to any LPG outlets
don't buy a full bottle.
Are not able to buy the full bottle. There are some who comes and buy 10 cedis, 20 cedis, 30 cedis.
I mean, there are times I walk in and buy 40 cedis.
Exactly the point. So as soon as you introduce cylinder recirculation, you are straight away you are cutting off these people from consumption of LPG. We've had issues like suggestions like the regulator is going to introduce smaller bottles in 1 kg, 2 kg, 3 kg. We should be very, very careful not to push such a potentially dangerous product onto children.
You mean the smaller cylinders are dangerous?
Very dangerous.
Why so? I mean, why would they be dangerous if the idea is to introduce onto the market smaller volumes for people who fall below the salary brackets and income brackets to be able to afford that?
Steve, now the smallest cylinder that we have is about a 5 kg. And if you fill that 5 kg, it will be difficult for even a 12-year-old to lift it. The moment you come and introduce 1 kg and 2 kg and 0.5 kg, they are going to come in a very small bottles. And you know the nature of the product we're dealing with. If you buy these products in such small bottles and take them home, if you are not there, your children
can carry them.
2, 3, 4, 5
and
years.
So your concerns are that these are introducing child risks into the value chain, and that's dangerous.
Risky. We should be careful not to proliferate these cylinders. Otherwise, the kind of explosions we are going to have on our hand will not be controllable.
But the NPA is also insisting that there have been stunted growth in the LPG industry over the past 10 years. So I am seeing this as an indictment on the existing LPG marketers or companies, because if for 10 years you haven't been able to increase growth, then perhaps you have no business to question why government is bringing recirculation.
Steve, we are surprised at that assertion, because from 2007 to date, the LPG sector has been growing at a rate of 16.16%.
And this is backed by statistics?
This is backed by statistics from NPA's own website. Go to NPA website, go and pick the figures there, and then do the calculations and see if indeed there's stunted growth. The only 2 years within this period that we've had a dip, some dip in growth, is 2010 and 2013. But that was not as a result of consumption and marketing. It was purely as a result of the fact that the market was undersupplied. Those were the days we were seeing queues and other things in town. So it was through no fault of us as marketers
that this has
happened. It is also true that over the past 2 years, the growth rate has slowed down. It's also because that a lot of taxes have been heaped onto the product. The LPG that you go out there to buy, almost 40% of the price you pay for LPG is taxes. And LPG consumption has slowed down purely because the product is too high. The price of the product is too high. So consumers, as I said, the average cylinder that we have in the system, the 14 kg, is now 75 Ghana cedis. How many people can afford that? So is the issue purely an issue of affordability, and it's not an issue of marketing.
So let's look at the claims by the NPA that the cylinder recirculation is actually the safest option. I know that your association has been concerned with the fact that this whole recirculation thing is unfair to you and is more like pushing you out of business. But beyond that, you don't think that the recirculation is the safest method for our country in our climatic conditions?
Steve, what we see is giving the dog a bad name and hanging it. The cylinder recirculation has been projected and has been touted as very safe. But
you think it's not safe?
I can assure you that what we are doing is safer, to be very honest with you. We accept the fact that there are challenges in our industry. To every industry, there is opportunity for improvement. I'm sure TV3, you are one of the best stations in Ghana. But I'm sure at your meetings and at your management,
we strategize
you are always strategists and getting it better. The LPG industry has come very, very, very far. If you cast your mind back to 10 years, 15 years ago, the way LPG was being sold in Ghana, there has been marked improvement. We believe that there are a lot of room for
really,
improvement.
what's the way forward for your organization? Because it does appear that government is not going to relent on the introduction of the cylinder recirculation. Are your members going to stay in business, or are they going to be pushed out?
Obviously, we've already been pushed out. Because if you look at the distribution chain that is coming with this model, the LPG marketing companies do not feature anywhere. We think that is very unfair. We have grown this industry from zero to where now. So even if you are coming up with a new model, don't you think it's just as fair?
You don't think the way to go is to push you out? Is
to push us out and then bring something completely, and now you are asking us to struggle to find a space in the new structure.
Right, Mr. Gumi, we're grateful for your time. I know this conversation will continue many times away from the studio, and that's where we draw the curtains for News at 10. I'm Stephen Antia. Thank you extremely for joining us. For those of you who tuned in to 3FM 92.7, thank you for leaving your dial there. On behalf of the crew, good night, and there is more news at 3news.com.